Now I'd like to welcome our three panelists for tonight's discussion. His Worship, Mayor Andrew Knack, Mayor of Edmonton. The CEO of the Edmonton Arts Council, Renee Williams. And the Executive Director of the Edmonton International Fringe Festival, Megan Dart. All right, everybody grab a microphone. We're going to start out with this question for all three of you. Mr. Mayor, we'll start with you. Why do you think the arts matter?
You know, I think they matter because they are what connect people together. And, you know, I've talked about this, so some of you have heard this story, but I think there's a lot of people who might not have heard the story. You know, when I started on council, I talked about how I didn't really feel like I was really connected to the arts. I didn't think about the arts as something that was as important as I've realized it to be now. And it was very naive, right? I mean, I didn't quite realize just how much the arts impacted everything that I did in my life. And, you know, I wasn't quite as far down the path as some often are, like, hey, when budget cuts come around, do you get rid of the arts? You know, I don't think I ever put myself there, but I just don't think I understood just how much it touched everyone's lives. And it helps people in tough times. It helps amplify the good times. And for me, it's very much about embracing that and in seeing how it's helped to build up the city that we have, particularly in Edmonton, and how this city has embraced the arts, I would say, more so than many other places I interact with. And so it's just that creativity that allows you to think about things differently. It allows you to approach challenges in different ways. And it is really integrated in everything we do. So why the arts? For me, it's just because it is what we need.
Renee, from your point of view, are things becoming more challenging with the world as it is? The things that are going on internationally, the political sort of pressures that are on governments, the different priorities that seem to be out there in the world, does that make a change and make a challenge for arts organizations?
Absolutely, but I also think now is the time when artists and art organizers and organizations need to step up and tell that story in a profound way, celebrating our differences, bringing light to the topics that maybe people don't want to necessarily get into or discuss or put at the forefront. And art has this incredible way of centering around something that might be uncomfortable and giving space to it and allowing us all to walk away with maybe common understanding and common ground. And I think in such a polarizing time where questions around equity, diversity, inclusivity are at the forefront of every conversation, now is the time more than any that I think that art and culture can contribute in a really meaningful way.
Well, it's interesting you say that because equity and diversity are under attack from a lot of areas. I mean, look at the University of Alberta. They're kind of in many ways abandoning the thought of using diversity and equity as a lens for hiring people or for talking about subjects. And I mean, a lot of this is coming pressure from down south. Mr. Mayor, I'll throw this one to you just because you're in the political realm. How does that impact the kind of decisions that are made at your level and you know, provincially and nationally?
Well, I would say locally it's less impactful because we are a city that really embraces the arts and embraces equity and diversity and inclusion. And I mean, this will sound, you know, even if you were wearing your cynical hat for a moment in politics, I mean, this city doesn't want to see that abandoned. You know, we go to the communities and chat with folks. There is no push. I mean, there's always going to be a handful of folks that want to see that removed, but Edmonton is not the type of city that wants to see that. But again, more so it's because it's built into everything that we do. And so I don't feel that pressure. I mean, even though the provincial government is sort of shying away from that, or, well, shying away is maybe a generous word, actively moving away from that. You see that in the U.S. That's not what we want to see here in Edmonton, and I think I can safely say for the rest of City Council, that's not who Edmontonians sent back, in October. They're not looking for a council that's going to back on that.
One of the things that the arts is part of, I think, in a big way that maybe isn't appreciated as much is the economic development of the city. Megan, your organization is where the rubber hits the road. I mean, you need to generate ticket sales. You're a business as well as an arts organization. How do you see things developing over the past couple of years? How are things changing? And as you look forward, are you optimistic?
Yes, and I mean, it's no secret that our sector has faced significant hardship, particularly in the post-pandemic rebuilds, coupled with rising inflation, labor costs, infrastructure costs. We are being asked to do a lot more with less, while we're seeing an increase in demand for our services. That said, though, I think Edmonton has an incredibly dedicated audience and volunteer base that is so passionate about ensuring that our arts sector continues to thrive, that they're showing up. And so too are our donors and our sponsors, and it has certainly changed the conversation. But I see great opportunity in the arts building back the economic resiliency of not just our sector, but of the city overall. The arts are critical city building infrastructure. We are what make Edmonton a place you want to live, work, play, and visit. And we need to invest in that infrastructure the same way we invest in any building or any transit route or any service that is offered at the city level, because that is truly what makes Edmonton Edmonton. It is part of our identity.
A lot of artists, you can look at them as either a sole proprietor or a small business. And they might put on a show or a play, and they need support to do that. And a lot of that comes from the Arts Council, Renee. We're turning out a lot of artists from the university, from MacEwan as well, University of Alberta, MacEwan, from smaller other colleges. How do you decide which groups you're going to support, because there's lots of legacy there too that the Arts Council is trying to support, and as we know, the dollars are not expanding that much.
Yeah, I mean, great question. And if you have the answer, I'll take it from you. Great question. And I think, that's part of the challenge that we're sitting in right now. I'll highlight one of our investment streams specifically. Last year we had in one of our streams, individuals and collectives, we had just south of 1,200 applications come through, and we were only able to fund just over 200. And so the growth in this city in arts and culture, the growth in people coming out of school, but also people moving here. There's one person in the audience I'm going to pick on because I quite literally just locked eyes on Garfield Morgan, incredible artist who has, yes, absolutely, who has such a great story in terms of living in another place in this country and seeing the opportunity in Edmonton, getting here, plugging in, and immediately receiving grants from the EAC to be successful in his work. And so as our population grows, as we grow as a place, it's getting increasingly difficult to meet that demand. And so I think some of those conversations are going to be, how do we rebalance this? We're going in for a new 4-year budget cycle in the fall and thinking about what that looks like. But how do we rebalance this to welcome new and also make sure that those legacy pieces, because that's what our city is really known for, right? Some of the legacy organizations and the legacy festivals, 50 years, some of them, to see some of that in our city and to see it continue to have the longevity that it's had. How do we continue to support it for another 30, 60, 90 years as the Arts Council?
Yeah. And Mr. Mayor, obviously going into that 4-year budget cycle, there's a lot of pressures on council. We can tell you support the arts by looking at your glasses, but and your Sidell socks? I wore my artsiest socks and shoe combination that I could find. So when you go into those things, I mean, you're talking about obviously billions of dollars that you're sorting out through the city. The arts, I think, there's I mean, there's a lot of money and not a lot of money. It's hard to say what it really means, because when you look at how the impact arts has, I think it's outsized on a lot of things that you also spend money on. So how do you quantify that? Where are you looking?
So as we started building out this 4-year budget, which hopefully folks know, and if you haven't, I'll just say it again, we're building a 4-year budget right now. It's happening throughout 2026, and it will start in 2027, go all the way through 2030. But to help inform that work, a couple of months ago, we went as a council to do strategic planning, and we set out 4 strategic priorities. And one of the 4 is economic development. And within that economic development piece, we specifically identified leveraging arts, culture, and sports as economic tourism drivers, both externally, but also internally to make sure Edmontonians are experiencing that. And so why does this matter? The fact that we've identified this means that is direction to our city administration as they're building out the next 4-year budget, that the arts, the culture are a priority for this council. And we view them as real drivers of economic development here, as we've just heard about. So that's how I have comfort, because it was council that came up with this. It wasn't just me saying that. It wasn't just 1 or 2 councillors. Council as a whole adopted this. And so we still will want, we just wrapped up budget engagement sessions across the city throughout the month of April. But there's going to be more opportunities to engage. There's going to be more opportunity to share your feedback. And I encourage, every single person in this room, as we get closer to October and November, to be involved in discussions and to make sure that you're sharing your feedback and that you're encouraging friends and family and others to reach out, because as much as I think this council isn't looking to make the change on the arts, we also know people are facing an affordability crisis, and arts can often be the one that gets put on people's bullseye right at the start. And we want to make sure more people are speaking out about why it's important to continue, not just to continue with what we're already funding, but to actually build upon that over the next 4 years, because we need to build on that based off how our city is growing. And to be able to reach more areas. And not every single person in the city is going to come downtown or going to come to the White Ave area to experience arts and culture. They might, because of a variety of factors, want to stay closer to home. And if they're at the very south edge of the city, what are we doing? Well, there's a lot of great programming now going out to community. How do we expand on that and grow it? And that's something that council's looking at right now.
Sounds like a 15-minute art city.
Yeah, 15-minute art city, absolutely. Yeah.
Have it close to home. Megan, you probably talk to a lot of your cohorts with other theaters and that sort of thing. What's the feeling out there? What is the vibe? What kind of feedback are you getting about the atmosphere of artists in the city?
Yeah. I mean, I think it's no secret our funding has remained stagnant for almost a decade now, while our costs continue to increase. We are a scrappy community. We do so much with so little and continue to really create the vibrancy that makes Edmonton such a beautiful place to live. And we know that arts and culture are one of the most effective tools we have to drive local business, to grow tourism, and to foster connection. One of my favorite stories I love to tell, so our festival site is across the street from a little business you might know called The Next Act. Little thriving, struggling business. No, but one of my favorite quotes, CJ, the manager at The Next Act, tells me often that Fringe is the 11 best Saturdays of his entire year.
Well,
the arts build density, and density builds habits, and habits drive the economy. We can't separate those things. And so I really do feel that the more we invest, the more we work together, the more we collaborate, and the more we honor arts as vital, the more successful we're going to be as a city.
And when you talk about those things, that it kind of reminds me, maybe there should be an arts plan for downtown as well. We talk a lot about downtown, about vibrancy, about safety, community safety. Renee, can the arts play a role in that? Do you feel like a place to be?
Absolutely. I'm going to highlight one of the teams that we have within the Edmonton Arts Council right now doing some incredible work in this regard. Our community animation team, they are our boots on the ground. They activate and animate Churchill Square, but not just that. They've actually moved on to take on the programming for O'Damon Park, for Alex Dakota, for Beaver Hills. So they're doing all of the programming in those spaces. And the one activation that I think I'm probably the most excited about as it relates to safety. You know, many years ago, council invested a great deal of infrastructure dollars in transportation and our LRT system and whatnot. And now we've got a bit of an interesting situation with safety around ridership and wanting to get on to go into the LRT spaces, wanting to ride. And so we've got a partnership with ETS, LRT. Bob, I don't know if I'm allowed to say that, but I just did. Okay, good. I got the nod, so we're good. LRT. And so during peak times throughout the week and the days of the week, we've got artists that we're hiring, we're bringing down into LRT spaces, and they are animating down there, and the Arts Council's down there with them. And it's just to give people that sense of connection, comfort, engagement, and experience while riding. This morning for Cinco de Mayo at Bay Street, we had a mariachi band at 7 o'clock. Councillor Morgan may or may not have been there at 7 o'clock taking some photos with the mariachi band, and might be a bit early for mariachi, but it worked. And we had, not early at all, eh? Yeah, so it worked. And so I think it's those kinds of things. How are we creating vibrancy in spaces and driving critical mass to help sort of make people feel safe in certain pockets?
When we look at how the participation of people in the arts, and I mean, I'm talking about audiences, has that grown over the last 10 years? Are we stagnant? Is it the same people going, or are young people going? I mean, I see the Grindstone, I think, wow, that's great. That's one of those places that just, it seemed to pop out of nowhere, and it's had a great success. It's doing its own thing, and it seems to attract a very young crowd. Am I right about that?
Yeah, I think audience behaviors have changed post-pandemic. We absolutely need to name that. We are competing for people's time and dollars differently now than we were previous to the pandemic, which means folks are being more selective about the activities that they engage in. However, when they invest enthusiastically. I know from Fringe's perspective, we have seen an incredible growth in our audience in the last couple of years. We are seeing that signaled across the Fringe Festival circuit nationwide. But I think that has a lot to do with the flexibility of programming that our particular festival offers. We have a lot of low barrier and no cost activities that are available to our community. Not a single festival ticket is more than $20. I like to joke we're the Netflix of live performance. You have more than 200 shows to choose from. There's loads of flexibility in how you can build your schedule. So we understand that we're reaching audiences in different ways. But I think what we need to also talk about is the fact that events like Fringe, and I mean, we are a festival city. We have more festivals than weekends in a year. That is so exceptional. But we manufacture something that cities can't do on their own. And that's that sense of collective effervescence, that like buzz that happens when neighborhoods are awake and walkable and there's something happening around every corner, because those moments of surprise turn into memories, and those memories turn into moments that turn into traditions. And suddenly we have folks who've been fringing with us for a decade or more. And so I do think there's great possibility there, but it is a different challenge this side.
Mr. Mayor, I've heard business people say to me, you know, when they're trying to attract talent to come to Edmonton, that all these things are a big part of it. It's like, sure, you offer somebody a job, you give them what they're going to get paid, but, you know, you talk about the Oilers, obviously, you talk about the Fringe, the Citadel, the Symphony, all the different things that are going in around town, and those are things that, if they're not there, it's going to show up in a big way, I think, as and affect the city, right? So the city itself has a responsibility in that way to make sure it continues, I think.
Oh, absolutely. Again, it goes back to that, talent attraction. When we're trying to attract, I think about some of the people we've attracted to some of the major research jobs on AI. They could be anywhere in the world. And so when they come here, you show them the River Valley. Yes, you do show them the Oilers, but you show them the arts. That is a critical part of having somebody choose this as their home, right? There's yes, we're in the most affordable major city in Canada, and that plays a role, but it's all of that surrounds that. It's one thing, if you're buying a cheap home, you can buy a cheap home in a lot of different places. What else can you get?
Well, not really.
Well, not in big cities. Not in big cities, but in smaller towns, you can buy homes more affordably. So what brings you here? It is the culture, it is the arts that have built on that, and it's why we have been successful in attracting so many talented people into our city, and also now retaining more and more people. I think I've heard from a number of folks in the arts community now where it used to be that Edmonton was the stepping stone to Toronto or Vancouver. And now I'm hearing more and more that people can make a true living here, in part because of the prices of housing, but also just because of the growth of this industry. And so that is really incredible to see what's been happening here, and we need to continue to lean into that. Like now that I get called when folks are looking to bring in investors, I go to those meetings, and we absolutely bring up the arts as part of why they should be investing in this city, why they want to locate in the city, why they want to bring their talented employees to the city. We highlight that because it's critical to the work that we do.
Yeah. Now, Renee, I know the Arts Council you don't solicit money from a lot of big sponsors because you want to leave that to the various groups that you support. But what are they reporting back to you as far as support from corporate Edmonton? How has that changed over the last 10 years, do you think?
Yeah, I think it's changed quite a bit. And I think post-pandemic years were a really big trigger for some of that change. I think some of the corporate sponsorship is focused in other areas, things like health. We saw a lot of that coming out of the pandemic. Funds are redirected to the health sector and other sectors, right? And so I think that that's happened corporately. I also think where donor dollars are concerned too, philanthropy and thinking about sort of legacy money that families are being left behind. That's changing as well. If parents are passing on and then kids are left with money and they don't necessarily have the same passion, desire, or interest, where does that money go? And what are provisions that are being made in those families to understand what that legacy looks like? So I think all in all, it sounds like I'm saying everything's just gotten harder.
Maybe it did.
Yeah, but I think there are definitely challenges around that for sure. And one of the key reasons I think why we don't necessarily step into that space outside of looking at partnerships like the Edmonton Community Foundation and some of their endowment investment and how we flip that into something like a residency for the Arts Council that could provide that opportunity.
You mentioned health. I mean, mental health is obviously a very important thing, especially coming out of the pandemic. Is something that governments focus on, and it's something that the arts can have, I think, a big impact in. I mean, there's lots of different ways, and I think that there's lots of artists who approach it from that point of view. Right? I'm barking up the right tree?
Absolutely. And it was actually I came across an article last October from the CBC around prescriptions. And it was an article that was came out of Montreal, and it was the idea that people are actually going to their doctors, and instead of getting maybe the prescriptions that they would normally get. Now, don't not take your heart medication, people. Like, definitely, if you need to take it, take it. But it was the idea of social prescription. So what does that look like by way of prescribing? Go see a play. Go take in a dance performance. Go experience some visual art and see if that gets you out of the doldrums that you might be in.
Mr. Mayor, when you talked about, Edmonton being a less expensive big city to live in, maybe we could sort of, I don't know, in the whole infill argument, work in the arts. So, yeah, we need infill to support the arts. Now, a special tax on infill is what I'm saying for the arts. Would you go for that?
I don't know if the province would let us do a special
Who's recording
tax.
right now?
Yeah, that's
recently, there's been some polling done about how people feel about the city, and I'm not sure where all these stats come from, but part of it was that Edmontonians certainly have a higher kind of respect, I think, for the arts and feeling that the arts are an important part of their city than most Albertans. And I'm thinking that's something we can leverage, right?
Oh, without a doubt. Yeah. From the Fringe perspective, we know that on average, Fringers attend our event 3.4 times over the 11 days of our festival, compared to 1.2 times for other events similar in scope and size to us. And based on some audience feedback surveys that we've done in the last couple of years, 96% of our attendees say that their experience exceeded expectation. And I know that is not unique to Fringe, because there are so many artists and producers and administrators in this city who care so deeply about taking care of their artists and providing that exceptional audience experience that it's the thing Edmontonians have come to expect. And we deliver on it every time. We punch way above our weight class. What is happening here in Edmonton does not happen in other cities. There's a sense of collaboration and volunteerism and a deep investment in the arts that makes it possible. And like the festivals that we have here, they're not a pilot, they are a proven system that really support the vibrancy of this city. And it's way more cost effective to really invest in and sustain what's working than rebuild something once it's lost. And something I really want to think about too is when we're talking about donors and sponsors, that municipal investment really signals confidence and stability and credibility, and it multiplies impact. That gives us opportunity to go to our donors and our sponsors and our partnerships and say, the city believes in us, our audience believes in us, you should believe in us too. And so I think there's just such an exciting conversation to be had there around economic return and workforce development and community connection and well-being, that piece, that intangible piece that we can't put a number on. There's something in that really is exciting to me.
I have one thing to say, because I think we're so humble as a city. I'm gonna challenge us all in this room, because I'm trying to challenge myself to do it. I don't think we punch above our weight. I think that is just who we are now. We're that way in the arts. We're that way, we often would talk about that when we host sporting events. We're number 1 in Canada, number 22 in the world for hosting sporting events. You have the stats that you just shared about those common things. That actually just is common now in Edmonton. Yep. And I think we need to remind ourselves of that, and we need to tell that story more and more, because we should be proud about what we're doing here. And we are. And I think that's, we're always so humble. Oh, we don't want to no, let's be proud about how much we support, how much the city supports the arts, what that means for us, and not be afraid to shout it to the rooftops, because I think that's also how we attract more people to come into our city to help grow what we're already doing so exceptionally well.
Is there a way to leverage city planning policy to encourage the arts in places? We always talk about making communities vibrant. I made the joke about the 15-minute arts city, but when you are redeveloping someplace, and I remember there's one in I was just heard it on the radio the other day about somewhere in Belgravia, I think they were developing something. They said there's not a business case to be made for this main floor being right now business. I said, well, okay, well then put in an arts studio, put in a couple of artists in there. Is there a way to leverage that, do you think, that we're not doing, that is possible?
Yeah, I was seeing his head bob behind the doorway. Al, if you're still in the building, you're probably somebody who could really respond well. Now I don't see him at all. Al, you could respond to this question. Come on up.
Come on up, Al. Take the podium.
Well, if you come here on Friday morning, that's exactly the discussion we're having with the new Edmonton Cultural Infrastructure Plan. This idea of, and you talked about it earlier, why isn't it all over the city? And that's exactly what we heard was, why is it always in these kind of 3 different central locations? We want the arts, we want these hubs all over the place. So we're looking up and down all the train lines going, where can I go in Mill Woods? Where can I go up in Belvedere? Where do we head with the new West Line? Lots of opportunity. And so that's exactly right. We're going to work with some city departments and say, when you're encouraging some of this infill, let's make some of these areas actual art spaces, and then look at the development permits and look at the different zoning.
So it could be TAD, Transit Artist Development. That's what you're saying?
We're going to steal that.
Yeah,
Thanks.
Steal that one. Go ahead. Okay, that's great. I mean, that is one way the city could leverage that sort of thing, right? I'm not sure how you kind of bend arms to do that sort of thing, but there's sort of written into certain bylaws encouragement for certain things, right? And the arts, I don't know if right now, Mr. Mayor, if it's sort of still is in there now.
Yeah, I think I do think actually, if you look at our zoning regulations, we updated them a couple of years ago to make to give the option for far more choices to exist, not just on the residential side, but on the commercial side, including your arts and culture. So it is far more flexible now that if somebody wants to set up an art studio in their home, our zoning allows for that more in a way than it ever did before. And then the other piece where I think the city plays a role in the land use, and this, I think even just to that point around, are we activating our transit centers? Are we making sure, we have a lot of city land that sits vacant, city buildings that sit vacant. Should we just be saying, let's lease all of that out for $1 and let people go create?
I would say yes.
Yeah, right. Otherwise, it's sitting empty. It's not doing what we want it to do, and I'd much rather have places where people can create than a city building sitting empty. 75% of the time.
And I think that in this scenario, you could also, with the help of the Edmonton Arts Council, say to builders and developers who say, well, we don't really have a spot for this. We say, we have an artist we can put in there for the next 6 months if you will let them go in there, and they'll create art in your building, and that will attract people there, whether it's a performance artist or a landscape artist. It could be any kind of artist, but we need to, and maybe what Al's talking about is part of that, but that could be I think a great idea.
Absolutely. I think that's what makes a partnership between the Edmonton Arts Council and Arts Habitat Edmonton so unique, because we look after the programming and the people, and they look after the spaces and the places. And so how can we complement and link those two things together? And I think that's really a good opportunity for us going forwards. I also want to highlight, too, a piece that I've not yet mentioned is public art. And I don't want to forget that the public art is an important piece of this conversation as well, too. When I think about communities and neighborhoods that maybe don't have infrastructure in them, what public art exists. I think about the Baldwin community, who got that incredible playground last year, first artist designed playground in our city, and we actually think it might be beyond our city as well. And AJ Loudon did such an incredible job, and stepping on that playground that morning and watching families and community members in the area come out of their homes with their kids, see the color, get so excited. It's like, it's functional. It's something for wellness, but it's also artist created. And so that's a really unique concept that I think we should be considering more.
One of the great festivals I thought we had for a few years was, basically the one to put art all over everybody's buildings, right? Do you remember what it's called? Yeah. And I just think that the city should be encouraging that all the time. That every time I see a photo from another city with a beautiful mural, I think, oh, that would look good in this place or that place. And it makes every part of the city look so great. And there's another thing that we could, facilitate or say we're open to, or just not let it happen, but try to push it forward, right?
I'll add in on that as well. I have a little anecdote. Had a facilitator work on a session for us a little while ago, and they live in the Lower Rossdale community, and they are an avid runner in the River Valley, and so she was sharing with the group that there's a bridge that she's got to run underneath, and every time she's approaching that bridge, it's like the heart rate goes up a little bit. It's a little bit gray. It's a little bit dark. She's unsure of what she's going to meet in and around that bridge, and so her guard is up as she's approaching the bridge. An artist from the City of Edmonton's Indigenous Relations Office, Kayla Belrose, did a mural on that bridge. And so much to this individual's surprise, they went for a run and saw that the bridge looked a little different and realized that a mural had been painted, and also noticed her physical reaction. Didn't notice the heart rate going up, didn't feel concerned that she was going to meet something that she didn't want to meet underneath the bridge. Just the muraling, the color, the brightness, the vibrancy of it changed how she interacted with that space and on that run. And so I think that that's another unique way to look at what public art can do for a community in terms of making making people feel safe and comfortable in their surrounding.
And also directing people, like people ask me sometimes where they can see a cool mural or that, Instagram a wall. And maybe there's a map out there that I don't know about.
There is.
There you go.
In fact, if you talk to the Old Strathcona Business Association, at least in our neighborhood, there's a really beautiful mural map, and you can do a walk of the neighborhood and see all of them. And Mural Fest is alive and well. We worked with them last year. We did a big, beautiful mural on the outside of the Arts Barns.
Right.
It's such a fun way to activate our community, but the walking tour is amazing. Highly recommend you check it out.
Well, in our neighborhood, we live in King Edward Park across from Avonmore School, and I think it was 2 years ago, somebody started painting a wall in the school. So I kind of walked over and said, hey, what's going on? And it was a substitute or supply teacher, I guess they call him now, art teacher, who was painting this mural. And it is so gorgeous. I don't know if anybody lives in Avonmore in that area. Have you seen the big tree that's on Avonmore School? It's just beautiful. And every time we walk our dog, every day, we think, oh, man, that's great to see every morning. That has such a great effect. And that's when you talk about mental health. Like, wow, that's just getting outside. You see that, you think, wow, that's beautiful. Oh, yeah, we can see it from our couch. That's true. Yeah, okay. Allison can see it from her couch. So there you go. So as we wrap up here, I just want to see if maybe each of you would like to do a little call to action. I mean, the folks here are all motivated. There's no doubt about it. But even beyond this room, what do you think? Where do you think the motivation can come from, or how can we get people out? And Megan, if we can start with you.
I will say that the arts in Edmonton are a core part of our identity, our heritage, our quality of life, our community well-being. We are home to some of the world's greatest and most recognized events and arts organizations and artists. The artists who build their career here go on to tour nationally and internationally, and they take Edmonton with them. To invest in the arts is to invest in a vibrant, thriving, diverse, and economically resilient Edmonton. And truly, if we are serious as a community about building that civic vibrancy, we have to invest in the arts as critical infrastructure.
I would say for me, art and culture is the manifestation of our city's personality, full stop. And so for the Arts Council, we've launched a campaign, Why Art Matters Now. And as much as I know all of you will tell me why, and I've talked to many of you, what we need are your neighbors. What we need are the volunteers at your organizations or your festivals. We need maybe those who aren't necessarily convinced. Part of the campaign, you go to our website, you kind of fill in your experiences. Have you gone to a thing lately? Tell us about it. Tell us your experience. We want to highlight it. So it's not just stats we're putting out there. It's also going to be some of your stories of Edmontonians, my neighbors every day, the guy with the garbage can who's really grumpy and doesn't say hi in the morning. It'll be his stories as well. And we're also going to incorporate some video as well too, reaching out to leaders, but also on the street video pieces that will just speak to people attending things and checking things out. So watch for that over the coming months. Share that with your volunteer databases. Share that with your neighbors and your friends. And we'd love to have more Edmontonians know about the work that we do and the incredible art and culture sector here in our city.
Yeah, do that. No, I think really just from the city side, and at the end of the day, I do recognize a lot of faces here, a lot of folks who are leaders in the organizations who are doing this work. So in a way, I appreciate preaching to the choir here a bit. So it is, how are you activating everyone else? We are going into this next 4-year budget cycle. That you often hear something along the lines of, don't tell me what your values are, show me what your values are. In the case of a municipal government, our values are shown through what we fund in the budget. And what we fund in the budget is informed by what we hear from the people that we serve. And the more we hear from the people that we serve about the importance of investing in arts and culture, the easier it is to make sure that is built into that foundation of what we're doing. I've talked about this 4-year budget as setting a new foundation of our budget, of recognizing that as a city, because we have literally spread ourselves very thin because of the physical expansion of our city, that it is putting a lot of pressure on us to be more thoughtful and focused about how we're spending our dollars, because we can't have 8 and 9% tax increases every year. I know there's some people who are like, I'll pay for it, it's great. Most people don't want to pay for that. So when we think about reimagining how we're budgeting, when we're setting a new foundation, to me, arts and culture is absolutely foundational to the city over the next 4 years and beyond. But we want to hear from everyone about that. We want to know, when that opens up and people can tell those stories, make sure it is being shared with your neighbors. Go knock on your neighbors' doors, host a barbecue, and talk to your neighbors a little bit about the arts and why that's important and why they might want to speak up on that as well. Invite them out to invite them out to all of the shows and the Fringe and everything that you do and all the great things there, but also when there are those localized events. When we saw through the Green Shack program in the summer and the arts events, which are still happening again. We're going to, how many are we doing? Do we know how many we're doing this year?
A lot. I'll just say that because I can see Bob staring at me over his glasses.
A lot are happening, which means there are going to be so many different more pop-up style events happening across every part of the city. So if you live in a part of the city that isn't downtown, that isn't White Ave and Strathcona, then get your neighbor out to when that event is happening and just show them. Just go out for a little walk that day and take them out, because those are the ways that we build more advocates. Those are the ways that we help sort of shift that narrative that this is foundational to the work we do each and every day.
And I think that communities, for sure, when they find out what's going on and what's happening and the kind of support they need, King Edward Park, we got notice a few months ago that our community league was going to shut down because we only had 9 volunteers. So we had a special meeting, and I think 250 people showed up, and it was great. We went there and met all kinds of folks, and it was great to see young families there and everything. And they were there and everybody said, "Well, pitch in. Everybody just does a little bit. We'll do great." The same is true for arts. Allison and I, we give monthly donations to the Fringe, to Theatre Network. We contribute to Workshop West. Allison and a girlfriend have tickets to Shadow Theatre. It's buying the tickets and being part of it. I know a lot of you here do that, so I thank you for that. I want to thank our 3 panelists here for speaking about this today. We appreciate it. It's a big subject, going a lot of directions. We're glad you took the time to do it, and thank you all for coming. We appreciate it. So let the conversation continue. Thank you.